Welcome back for Chapter 7 of Junior Blaze, Birth of a Hero. Don't forget to catch me on YouTube, and a big shout out to Chilled Cow for the music, and let's dive right into Chapter 7. In the month that MJ had been on his grandfather's farm, he had practically become a professional at all aspects of running the place, in his own opinion. He would awaken and dress before Arthur and prepare breakfast, and he hardly had to be corrected on any of the jobs he was given. Most days, his grandfather rarely had to remind MJ of what the next job was. He was really adjusting well. Although Arthur had certainly taken notice, he wasn't one for giving compliments for a job done the proper way. He did need to give the kid an even bigger head. The relationship between the two of them, however rocky it began, had seemingly reached a healthy and stable place. While MJ would wake himself and make breakfast, Arthur would cook lunch and dinner. MJ washed the dishes, Arthur would put them away. It wasn't exactly a well-oiled machine, but it was at least decently greased. Once Arthur was confident that MJ could handle the workload of farm life, they began working on discovering and perfecting his powers and abilities. They knew that he had developed eyesight from the incidents that had occurred previously, and they also knew that MJ had enhanced strength. Due to all the physical labor he had been doing, his strength and stamina had increased dramatically. Technical difficulties. They discovered his sonic speed on the same day they tested his distance and accuracy with his eyesight. Arthur had dressed up a scarecrow and placed it at one end of the bar. MJ stood at the other end, about 40 yards away. MJ had only used this power twice before, and both times accidentally. He wasn't sure this was the best way to get control of this ability. "Gramps, this won't work," MJ protested. "Last time I tried, I broke my bathroom." "That's your problem. You quit after one failure. All you kids are the same these days. Gramps, let's not get sidetracked by another one of your rants." "I'm not ranting. Now get over there and do what you're told." MJ swallowed his snarky retort and readied himself across the barn. His faith in this little experiment was already low, and he really didn't like it when his feelings were ignored. He was about to tell Arthur again how this wouldn't work when he heard Arthur shout something his way. "Close your eyes and focus all your thoughts on that one power," Arthur instructed. "Think cold, freezing. Think of long winters, no shelter. Imagine hopelessness and despair. When you feel the temperature drop, open your eyes and let loose on the target." MJ closed his eyes and concentrated deeply on all the sadness his grandfather had laid out to him. He thought about what it would look like, or what it would be like to be alone, hungry, and cold. He felt a twinge of pain behind his eyes as a tear escaped down his cheek. He concentrated on that pain and let his mind drift back to the first time he felt it. He thought about the incident during his gym final. He remembered the shower he had frozen back home. Then his thoughts shifted to his father being Blaze and his parents not trusting him with the family secret. That's when the temperature began to drop. MJ let out a guttural yell as he opened his eyes. The rush of cold that exploded from his eyeballs was the most intense he had ever felt. He realized at this moment that he hadn't seen what he was firing at and blinked. The blast of eyesight stopped, and he looked at where his grandfather should have been standing. All he saw was a trail of frozen ground across the barn and a giant hole covered in icicles near the top of the barn door. The scarecrow remained unharmed in a seemingly mocking fashion. "Gramps!" MJ shouted as he sprinted to the far side of the barn, except he didn't feel like he was sprinting. The air around him got hollow and short, almost like he was in a tunnel. His muscles felt loose and relaxed, and everything around him stood perfectly still, like a postcard. In an instant, he exploded from the barn like a rocket, legs stomping and churning like a runaway locomotive. Every time he blinked, and with every step he took, he appeared to be in an entirely different environment. When he finally realized he was running at sonic speed, he shut his eyes tight and tensed up his entire body. Once he felt like he was no longer moving at Mach speeds, he opened his eyes and just nearly avoided running into a minivan stopped at a traffic light on a street he didn't recognize. Confused, he knocked on the door, startling the elderly man and his wife inside. They glared briefly at MJ before eventually rolling down the window. "Are you okay, son?" the woman asked from the passenger seat, still shocked by the sudden appearance of a young stranger. Yeah, I think. No. Yeah, I'm okay, MJ stuttered. Are you sure? Do you need us to call someone? The man spoke, a frown furrowing his brow. No, really, I'm fine, MJ said after clearing his throat. Could you do me a favor, though, and tell me, what city this is? The man and his wife gave each other a very concerned look. Elkhart, son. You're in Elkhart, the man said clearly and slowly. Indiana? MJ asked, eyes opening wide in disbelief. Yes, honey, the wife responded. Great, MJ said with a frown. Thanks. As MJ jogged away from their car, they gave each other one more confused look. Do you smell burning rubber? The man asked his wife. MJ jogged back in the direction he came to the best of his knowledge. His photographic recollection from his sonic speed journey made it a little easier to remember. When he felt he was out of sight from anyone and anything that could spot him, he closed his eyes and let his muscles relax. He heard the air around him go hollow, and he was off again in sonic speed. When he started to recognize the postcard-like visions he was running through, he slowed down. He came to a stop just outside a field behind Arthur's barn. He didn't see his grandfather anywhere, so he rushed over at full tilt. Gramps! MJ yelled once he reached the barn. Up here, came Arthur's disembodied voice from an undisclosed location. Where? Look up, Junior. He tilted his head back and saw Arthur standing on a ledge near the frozen Arthur-shaped hole above the barn door. Noticing a lack of any visible ladders, a perplexed MJ stared blankly for a few moments before speaking. Gramps, how exactly did you get up there? MJ asked incredulously. Arthur took a break from chipping away at the ice and smirked down at his grandson. I jumped, he replied simply. But I thought your only power was enhanced strength. You thought wrong. Arthur leapt from the platform and landed firmly on both feet. He started toward the house with MJ hot on his heels. He had several questions that he needed answers to. Gramps, did you see me run? Do you think I'm faster than my dad? Are you fast too? Do you think I can jump like that? I think now is the perfect time to answer all your questions, Arthur said, turning around to put his arm around MJ. They walked back to the house in a calm silence. The sun was just beginning to set behind the trees surrounding the property. They heard the faint rumblings of thunder from a few counties to the east. The storm was coming. Arthur prepared a quick meal of fried chicken and corn. They sat and ate peacefully as the storm reached town and it began to rain. When they finished, both Stevens cleaned up before moving to the living room area where Arthur gave MJ the picture from the mantel. Junior, our family were slaves. Did you know that? Arthur asked, looking at the rain out the window. I kind of assumed, but I didn't really know, MJ said, almost ashamed. I've never asked about it. Well, now you know. Arthur took a seat on the couch near the fireplace and motioned for MJ to join him. We were brought here against our will, forced to work on plantations of rich white men who treated us as nothing but animals, less than animals. Arthur took a deep breath and sighed. He didn't want to sound angry, but his family history clearly affected him. MJ looked on patiently, and Arthur continued. The family that owned ours were exceptionally cruel. They wanted more efficient labor, so they began to experiment on some of us. Using brutal and unconventional methods they learned from their ancestors, the things they did would look like a science fiction or horror movie now. Some called it witchcraft, others say voodoo. They called it science. Mixing chemicals into the food and performing experimental surgeries, they ended up killing dozens, but they would have the other slaves dispose of the bodies before bringing in the next unlucky soul. Then, after years of failed attempts, one survived. My great-grandfather, Hiram. It's not clear to me if it was from the combination of potions he had ingested or the surgeries he endured, but he had become stronger, faster, had more stamina. The perfect slave. Why didn't he run away? MJ interjected. Fear, MJ. This was the most powerful weapon they had. Fear of his masters and fear that they would actually harm his family as they had threatened. So, he stayed and worked. He worked right up until he died, leaving his wife and their newborn son behind. As soon as the kid was old enough to walk, he was put to work as well. Much to the delight of his masters, the child began to develop powers of his own, passed down from his father, even stronger, even faster. But his skin was more durable. He was impervious to the white man's methods of controlling him, and he rebelled. They killed his mother to try to regain power over him, but he destroyed the plantation and escaped. My grandfather, Lewis, spent the rest of his days helping slaves escape north, using the Underground Railroad. The first superhero of the family, MJ said, completely awestruck. You could say that, Arthur said proudly before continuing. Slavery was abolished by the time my father was born. He tried to live a quiet and simple life, but the family that owned us found him. They wanted revenge for his family, stealing what belonged to them. His eyesight manifested for the first time, and he evaded capture, but spent his life raising me in isolated locations. Like this farm? MJ asked. Exactly like it. Unfortunately, he couldn't hide us forever. We were found again. To save our family, my father, Malcolm, killed the man that broke into our home. He himself died shortly after. His last words to me were to keep my family safe. I failed him, Junior. Failed? How? What do you mean, Gramps? MJ implored. 2 years ago, they found me. I don't know how. Your grandmother and I tried to run, but we couldn't shake them. Arthur's voice trailed off as he glanced at the picture MJ held onto. Your grandmother, my wife, my sweet Cadence, stood her ground as they attacked, allowing me to escape. Gramps, MJ hugged Arthur, unsure of what else to say or do. They never should have caught us, Arthur said, standing up abruptly. And if anyone should have died that day, it should have been me. Thunder rumbled and the storm raged outside the house, mirroring the emotions on the inside. Arthur watched the rainfall while MJ sat silently, taking everything in. Once Arthur regained his composure, he spoke with a sullen seriousness. MJ, I'm afraid that this family will never stop hunting me, hunting us. They'll come after me, your father, and eventually you. I'm going to tell you what my father told me. Keep your family safe. Is this why you didn't want my dad using his powers? Because they would find him? Yes, Arthur nodded solemnly. But my father is a hero. He wouldn't let anything happen to me or our family. Every hero has a villain, Junior. Who is this family that has caused us so much chaos and tragedy? MJ demanded as he stood up to join his grandfather at the window, still clutching the photo of his grandmother. Lightning struck, and more thunder roared as Arthur looked to MJ. Their name is Marshall. And that's the end of Chapter 7 of Junior Blaze, Birth of a Hero. Check back next week for Chapter 8 live read. And you can catch me on Facebook. Chapter 8 will be posted Thursday night at 8. So until then, have a fantastic week, folks.